been so encouraging. Like, I finally feel accepted in a community. I finally feel wanted in a community. That was something that I always felt like lacked.
We don't have like a core group of relationships that we can lean onto, because we try to do this lone wolf mentality.
But then, how do we come back to God with full hands? How can we receive anything when we already have everything in our hands? He has to empty us. But in order for him to empty us, sometimes it's a very hard.
I know we were talking about building boys versus mending men, right? And I think you got to the point, if you would agree, where you had to be mended, right? Because by that point, you weren't. What I'm hearing you say is you weren't built as a boy, so you made these choices, and then you had to go through the mending process. Did your brothers contribute to your mending? Because I know you said like your church leader did, and that your really good friend, you're standing up in his wedding. Who were some of the other people that contributed to that mending, or to this day are still working on that mending, right? Because how recent was all this? Like, would you say it was like 2 years ago?
Last week.
Like a year
Okay,
and a couple months.
So
Wow,
recent,
that's fresh.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's real fresh.
So you might still be mending some things, right? Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
Is there anyone maybe outside of church that's contributing to that?
I'd say
That's a great question.
my
great question.
my brother.
That's what I was looking for.
Which one?
So Matt.
Oh,
So
A year
Jake's.
and a half?
Yes.
Yeah.
I also want to touch on Jake one last time, if that would be okay. I really think God worked in him through this challenging time, because there were not good decisions made by my dad that I think God helped push Jake towards the church, towards a mentorship of a Christian that really kept him solid, because he was a super popular kid, and he could have easily done what the popular kids done, and he lives a private life. Maybe he did that stuff, but I don't really think he did. He was really like, I think God really helped him through those times, and just being in that community and really worked with him. So that was just something I wanted to touch on. Like, through those
I
tough
feel that.
times, like, he had a brother in Christ to rely on, who, even looked after all of us during the summer when my mom had to work. Like, she knew she couldn't be home all the time during the summer. He babysat us for the whole summer. Boy, was he tough. He'd make us do like push-ups, pull-ups, all that stuff. But he was awesome. We did a lot of wiffle ball. But going to my brother, he knew about the challenging times I was going through, and like he saw the change happen, and so for some reason, which I still thank God for, he wasn't really religious, and God has really been working in his life. So it was like we were going through this journey together, through different routes, but the same end goal.
that's beautiful.
So that was something where, it's just been really encouraging to see God work in Matt's life, and just how he's taken that, life up, and not trying to live by his own wants, but understanding what he needs, which is God. And so that is something that's really just been helpful, that late night talks at home, or just kitchen talks, just whatever, just breaking down or just talking about God honestly. So that's something that has just been really helpful in my process. But as well, that church community, the young adults, the guys there who have just been so encouraging. Like, I finally feel accepted in a community. I finally feel wanted in a community. That was something that I always felt like lacked. And I think that came from a place of insecurity. I didn't know who I was. But, I've been really finding my identity through Christ. That's something that's really helped in my confidence and just helping me be who I truly am. And so that church community has just been such a blessing. Like, I wouldn't be a small group leader for high schoolers without that church community, or for young adults.
See, that's something that I will touch on, because I think you've said community probably like 5-6 times already throughout, and it's like my ears like picking up on it. And you've really emphasized this importance of not just community but relationships. And I think that that's one of the pieces that are missing in men. In men, that's why we end up mending them, is because we don't have like a core group of relationships that we can lean onto. Because we try to do this lone wolf mentality, and we don't tap into these relationships. We try to do everything on our own. We try to solve the problems. And if you don't have a community, and it's not just a young generation thing, even grown men, they don't have the relationships to lean on to that. So to be where you're at, and to know, you've mentioned community and identity. Those are things that I think a lot of men struggle with. Men don't know who we are, who we're supposed to be, and we don't have other men to talk about it with.
Yeah.
So we internalize so much until it starts to come out in pornography, gambling, all these bad things. It's all, we're trying to fill this gap that identity and that relationship piece is missing. So you've mentioned it multiple times just in your speech alone, and I could tell like it's really important to you. So I commend you on that, and I love that you acknowledge that. And for the kids, young adults that end up watching this, that's going to be a big takeaway from this episode. Listening to you is the emphasis of community and relationship, as well as identity, because those are men are weak at that.
And you're really fortunate in the fact that you know what your identity is, because you found that in Christ. Because I can tell you, at 23, I still didn't really know what I was about, right? And I feel like
23.
I feel like
That's another
God
episode.
God put you through the situation you went through in order for you to find a new identity. Because you were finding your identity in high school by hanging out with the wrong crowd and the sports, and you had to go through that tough time for you to discover yourself, because you were the lone wolf. So you were just walking down a beaten path until you found your community, the town that took you in. But I think the beautiful thing about your story is, you said as you were going through your transformation, you also made your brother a believer. So through your experience, although, it was unfortunate, you brought someone else to Christ with you. And going through that together, it's a beautiful thing.
Man, so I wanted to go back to when you said that, when you were dealing with the gambling addiction and such, you had experienced the loss of everything, right? And I kind of started thinking about that story where, the man comes up and he says, what would it take for me to go about being able to inherit the kingdom of God? Type of thing. You said, well, you need to go about losing everything or giving everything away. And the man kind of walked away, and he was upset because he had so much. And I think that a lot of people end up experiencing that because we go about accumulating all these things that show like a status of wealth or popularity or otherwise. And, I think that accumulation of those things, it comes from a place of insecurity. Because when you didn't have those things, you remember back to how it was that you felt. And now you have those things, and it's like, okay, I'm good. but if I was to go about losing all of that stuff again, where would I be? You said that you had hit rock bottom. So now you have the space to go about filling those gaps that you might have filled with other things with God. That was a phenomenal part of your story, man. I really appreciated that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. No, I was just gonna say it's actually funny because on the way here I was reading about Peter and Jesus. Well, after the resurrection, right? Jesus comes to him and he asks him 3 times, right? Do you love me? Because Peter denied him 3 times, and he amended all of that, right? So God is gonna take you back to the beginning, not to accuse you. That's the part of the devil. He's always gonna accuse you. He's always gonna point out to you like, this is what you have done wrong. When all along, Jesus is going to come and take you back to the beginning to show you this is where my mercy and my love was renewed for you in this very moment. And like what Brian was saying, is that all of those things that we filled our life, that empty space, we filled it up with garbage of this world. But then how do we come back to God with full hands? How can we receive anything when we already have everything in our hands? He has to empty us. But in order for him to empty us, sometimes it's a very hard and very, very, I would say damaging process. Because God is in the restoration business, right? He's amending men. Unfortunately, we made those mistakes. You have made those mistakes. But the beauty of your story is the redemption through Jesus Christ, right? The redemption of your brother. So much so, even your older brother, right? The experiences that he had to go through in order for him to remain a role model for you. Think about the cross that he had to carry in order for you to always see that, a father figure in him. When your father was absent, God gave somebody else to step up to the plate, and thank God for your brother that he did that. He took upon that role. Because if it would be somebody different, or if you would have went along with the popularity, with the world, maybe you wouldn't have known in that very moment. And your life would have been different. Your story would have been different. Maybe you would have been at 30 when that the epiphany moment would have happened. But thank God that you're at 23 and you have this amazing testimony, because God still is sovereign to his name. And he let people in your life that were godly, that were holy, that represented him and represented heaven, that you had that good example.
I love
Looking like
how
a true big brother.
I love how the timing of everything is so, like, God's timing is always perfect. You let it up with your story. Brian ties it in, and on the way here, on the drive to the church, I always pray, for these podcasts and these opportunities to get together. And the thing I wrote down, which Brian and Chip literally just touched on, I wrote down, you can't make your life wider until you start growing deeper. And I don't know why I wrote that down. Like, I get it, right? Conceptually, right? You got to go deeper before you really go wider. And it's like, just the timing of it, man. Like, we think about accumulating all these things in the world, and your life is getting wider and wider and wider. But you can't really, that will mean nothing unless you've gone deeper first. And in that depth, that's where you really find who you are, who your identity is. And I feel like there's someone that's going to be listening to this who's, maybe 18, 19, 20, and they're going to be in that phase of trying to figure it out and trying to, like, what does it mean to be a man? And trust us, we're still figuring that out. And we are way older than 20, 30, you know what I mean? We're trying to understand that now. And I think we all came to the conclusion, or we're all coming to the conclusion, that once you go deeper, you understand who God's really calling you to be. I think that's the beautiful thing about personal development, right? You start reading books, you start going to seminars, you start, getting yourself better and 10Xing, and you read David Goggins and all these things that are making you better. But there's a cap to that. And once you hit that cap, I believe the next transition is faith. Because once you hit that ceiling of personal development, you're going to be like, is this it? Like, I know how to, sure, I can make my body better. I can make money. I can do all these things. Is this all that life is about? And that next transition is going to be faith.
If you were to, if somebody were to ask, okay, like, what would you do different, or what are a thing that I would say, like, an advice that you can go back and give your younger self, what to stay away from, or what to look for, what to be, I guess, more sensitive, in the sense that, man, I can see that from a mile away. If I take that road, that's where I could potentially end up. What was be like something that you took from this experience that be like, man, like, I wish that particular thing I would, and maybe it's nothing, and there's nothing wrong with that, but is there something specific that you can give, not
That's
only
so
to
good.
yourself, but to other people, at your age when you were going through all of this, things that maybe to open up their eyes, things that, hey, this is what, it's a major red flag.
I think I really denied what I truly needed. I, consistently was just like, this is what I want. This is what I want. And it's like, what I wanted was things of the flesh. It wasn't something where, like, I had so many opportunities to create great relationships with people from churches. And thank the Lord I've been able to reestablish those. There's like, in those moments, like, those were guys who were accepting of me, who did love me just being there. And I was like, these aren't the friends I want to have. These aren't, I want to be going and doing other stuff.
Yeah.
It's like, I thought I knew better. So it's like, really just like
this ego.
yeah, like, stop being stuck in my own ways, because like those guys like really appreciated me. But also being vulnerable to find a mentor in those moments, because I mean, throughout high school I was super depressed and I wouldn't do anything about it. Like, I didn't try to find anybody who was older than me, who had gone through that stuff. I just was like, this is life. Like, my life sucks. Emo boy stuff. Just
Listening to like Blink 182.
Yeah.
I still listen
I don't
to
even know if
that.
they're emo. They're not.
Where are you?
Papa Roach.
They've got a couple good songs. But stuff like that, like, I really wish, like, I had gone and sought a mentor, because it's doing life alone just is not. I mean, it's possible, but if I could put it in perspective, it's probably like 1 in a million.
Yeah.
It was like, maybe you got to be like David Goggins,
Yeah.
killer mode. So it's like a mentor really could have helped me, because like I was going through so much and I didn't know who to talk to. But also, like, just like, yeah, understanding, like, no, you need this. Like, I get what you want, but like, you need this. You need to be with these guys who actually want you to be your best self, not guys who just want to see you do cool stuff.
Yeah. I think that the hardest part about really being that age is knowing what that actually looks like.
Yeah.
Because I know when I was that young, I was just trying to find people that were doing the same stuff as I was. And if I found somebody that was like a couple years older, they're doing the same thing that I was, but they were just doing it better.
That's so good. Yeah.
So being able to recognize when it is exactly that you need to go about making a change is sometimes the hardest thing, man.
Yeah.
And luckily you did it, but it happened at the right time.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Right? Because if you didn't go through all those things, and who knows, maybe you would have, went through a period of relapse. And then you start falling in with the crowd that's, doing even worse things than what you were. And then, it takes you to hit rock bottom to say, oh man, I really need to pull myself out of this, but I don't know how. So
Yeah.
it happened at the right time.
Absolutely. I'm 100% grateful for the story I have. You know, all those were things I'd change. I wouldn't change my story, just because, like, you know, this is what God intended for me. This is why I'm at where I'm at. And it's something now where it's like, regarding temptation and, like, with the old self, like, I understand to not go around those crowds, but there are still friendships where, like, I truly care about those people. So it's like
Yeah.
finding that mix of, like, yeah, I'll hang out with you, but, like,
Yeah, we
let's
can't
go to
do
dinner.
this. Yeah.
Let's go to dinner. I don't want to hang out at your house where,
Yeah.
like,
'Cause
you know,
you know what happens at the house.
yeah, some, you know,
What happens at the house?
walnuts.
No, it's a very like great maturity, like spiritual maturity actually,
Absolutely.
to be aware of the evil attack, right? I mean, the Bible
Yeah.
clearly says it, that we're at war, you know, with the principalities of darkness and you know rulers of this world, in a sense, you know, the devil, the enemy, and yeah, man, I applaud you for that.
Thank you.
Being able to avoid the temptation. That's tough.
So